Wysteria, energy, twister.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Satan's Town. We just got to the part that God help us all because we're going back to witchcraft and superstition. As Sally looked up, I wish those damn reporters would research their material better. It's this trying Satanism and witchcraft together that has caused so much confusion. If they spent more time looking for Satanists instead of bothering witches, we might not be in this state. Smith folded up the newspaper. The only time people will see that there is a difference is when they've all joined Sinclair's damn church. This Jackson is the problem, though, not Sinclair. Sinclair's just an idiot. If Jackson knows about Fursoidan and Bowisost, then more trouble is heading this way than Stanton has ever seen. Sally sat back down, slightly wary. "Have you had any more trouble with your—" She pointed to his chest vaguely. Smith shook his head. "No, just a couple of flutters a few weeks ago. I'm fine." Sally nodded. "So what are we to do?" Sinclair shook his head. "It's too late to mobilise the townsfolk to shun them. There's no point in getting the national press involved. The church is protected by law. I think the only option we have is to leave. And go where? Stanton is just the start. They'll spread out from here and from the other towns they've taken over. Eventually, there'll be nowhere to go." Smith nodded grimly. "I know. But it'll take them time. Give us breathing space." They were silent for a time, but finally Sally spoke. "Is this Jackson character in the town?" "I think so. Old Campbell saw a limo coming a few nights back. Look, I'll go back home and pack. Can you be ready to leave tonight?" Sally looked about the small, tidy flat and finally nodded. "Give me a couple of hours. Does the old car still work? It should get us to Edinburgh." He stood. "I'll be back around midnight." A deep fog had drifted in off the sea again, and Smith was glad of it. He could hear youngsters moving about, lots of them, but he managed to keep out of sight. The adults in the town stuck to their sullen silence, but it was only a matter of time before some teenagers took it on themselves to deal with the problem of the holdouts. The house had been attacked again during his absence. Several footprints on the door showed that an attempt had been made to kick it in. He quickly closed the door behind him, just as something heavy hit it on the outside, and a torrent of abuse from several voices started up. He climbed the stairs and pulled an already packed case from under his bed. He had been prepared for this for months. Taped to the case were the keys for the garage and for the car. He ripped the tape away and put the keys in his pocket. Then he went back down the stairs and stood at the people at the front door, watching until he was sure the group of teenagers had moved on. Some minutes later, he flicked off the main power switch in the house and quietly left. The garage was across the road and down a dark lane. He walked slowly and quietly. He could hear voices all round the area, but, as he suspected, most of these youngsters were cowards who would not go into the darkened area where they might become the target. He opened the garage door, got the car started, moved it out, and returned to close the door. He had practiced this whenever he could, but even in the few minutes it took, he could hear voices approaching. He got into the car, locked the doors, and waited with the lights off. After a little while, a group appeared, dimly through the fog and gloom. Their voices were raised clearly to intimidate whomever was here. Smith switched on the lights and drove straight at them. A couple dived over the edge to one side and a couple over the stone wall to the other. One or two stood their ground expecting him to stop, while the rest tried running in the directions they had come. Smith did not stop, even after he run 3 of them down. The car was not registered, so it was unlikely to be caught. He just had enough of the harassment. He considered parking inside the lowland church grounds, but decided against it. The church was the focus of the entire town's activities, and an unknown car would stand out like a sore thumb. Crossing the church car park seemed foolish, So he went round the block and approached the building by the same route he had taken the night before. At the rear of the church, he found a fire escape door, which, not surprisingly, was unlocked. Before the Satanist had arrived, Stanton had been a town where doors were never locked. Now that it was all Satanists, the same was true. The stairs creaked under him, but the voices he could hear in the church itself and downstairs did not stop. As he walked along the downstairs corridor, he could make out an American voice talking and pausing in a way which suggested he was on the phone. Smith peered into an office and saw Jackson, facing away from the door, a mobile phone crushed between shoulder and ear. He leaned in a little to hear better, just as a huge man appeared and threw him against the wall. Smith reached out as he fell, and his right wrist shattered in a blaze of agony. Jackson spun his chair around and saw what was happening. "Sorry, Jack. Got to go. We've got an unexpected visitor. I'll call you back." He disconnected the call and threw the phone onto the table. "Well, well, well," said Jackson. "You must be George Smith. My colleague, Mr. Sinclair, has told me all about you. And here you are. For what, I wonder? Why are you bothering me? What have I ever done to you?" Smith cradled his clearly broken wrist and said nothing. Jackson shrugged. "Fine. I'm a peaceful man. I have no intention of repeating Mr. Sinclair's violence of last night. But plainly I cannot let you loose at the moment. I'm afraid you will have to sit through one of our, services." The guard pushed Smith out into the hall, followed him with Jackson at the rear. They climbed the stairs and entered the church. Sinclair was standing at the altar platform preparing himself. He raised his eyes skyward when he saw Smith. "Good grief, you just cannot keep away, can you?" He saw Jackson come in the rear, and bowed slightly. Jackson nodded to him. Smith was tied about the arms and chest after Jackson suggested that tying his wrists might be a little cruel. With a resigned sigh, Smith sat and Jackson sat beside him. "Mr. Smith, I know that you object to our activities here, but at the end of the day, you cannot win. We're doing nothing illegal, and we are harming no one." Smith remained glumly silent, but Jackson was not to be put off. "I'm also sure that you think what we do is just mumbo-jumbo, but fortunately for you, tonight is a special ceremony. Tonight we'll be invoking something powerful. Tonight we will attempt to bring the exiled gods, Wysteria and Bawitsost, back to us." Smith looked around. "I know something about those things, and that really would be a mistake, Jackson." Jackson smiled. "Well, I think I know better, and that is the course we are pursuing. I laid down all the preparatory incantations a couple of weeks ago, and there was a definite reaction to them. Tonight, we can finish and bring the exiles back." Smith shrugged his shoulders against the tight ropes. "Why for Souden and Bawitsost? They're hardly top-of-the-line demons. Why not go for the big man himself?" Jackson laughed. "You might know a little about this, but you obviously don't believe any of it. Invoke the Lord Satan? I'd rather walk into a nuclear reactor. No, we revere Satan. We invoke the lesser beings. As for Soden and Bowisost, the other demons are plenty. Our religion is one that values whatever existence we are in. If we are in to live in this plane, then we should live well." Smith laughed. "I wish you luck, Jackson. Even if you succeed, though, I doubt you'll get one of Satan's minions to honour any commitment." Jackson smiled and stood up. "I think you'll be surprised tonight, Mr. Smith. I think you'll find hell plays tough but straight." Smith said no more, but forced his hands round a little so that he could gently hold his poor broken wrist. And that is the end of part 2, guys, of Satan's Town. I apologise for the noise. It's my dog, Dougal. He's got big chops, and when he flaps them, they do make a sound. It's quite noisy. He's a big dog. Thank you for listening, and many blessings. Wysteria. Energy. Twister.